of the Honeylube Sun City 400. The South African off-road season got underway at Sun City on February the 12th with the Honeylube Sun City 400, the opening event of the 1994 South African Off-Road Sprint Championship. The Sprint Championship caters for one-day events of up to 400 kilometers in distance.
We reduced the classes from 10 down to 6. We now have 4 classes in the production, and then we have the space frame category. The consolidation as such of the classes is, I think, working very well if we look at the entry here. We've tried to simplify it so that the public can also relate to it. What is also of interest is that this year we will have at each race a production class overall winner and a space frame overall winner.
Hot favourite to win the motorcycle section was Natal Springbok, Alfie Cox.
Now, I have taken on a whole new deal for this year, KTM European bike, and I'm very happy with the bike. And always at the beginning of the year, everybody wants to win, and I know there's some guys out there that nearly did it last year that want to do it this year, and they're going to be snapping at the heels, I'm almost sure. It's not going to be an easy ride, but wet conditions, dry conditions, I don't mind what it's like.
A new season always brings new names to tackle the established riders and crews, with the Honeylube Sun City 400 drawing a massive entry of cars, motorcycles and quad races.
Seeing that we were relatively successful last year in coming second, we believe that we've got as good a chance this year than any of the guys. The bigger class does make it more interesting because the level of competitiveness is definitely bigger. But our riders, we've got a good chance.
An early morning 8-kilometre special stage determined start positions for the 400-kilometre event. Both car and bike competitors were scheduled to complete 2 100-kilometre laps of a west course and an east course. Early indications were that recent heavy rains would ensure an abundance of wet sections. The car brigade tackled the eastern loop first, and it didn't take crews long to discover that much of their day would be spent negotiating long stretches of muddy terrain. Nardus Alberts and Peter Matthias set the fastest time on the special stage and found themselves in the role of having to set the pace from the front of the field in the Rapsa Raceco. Second car away was the Super Pave Raceco driven by Rob Walk. Cars were set off at 30-second intervals and bikers at 15-second intervals, with Yuri Human and Alfie Cox the first bikers away. Alberts and Mathieu was soon under pressure from Klaus Degener and Thilo van Westenhaken in the BP Raceco, who made up 2 early places. While Degener was in his normal aggressive mood, Richard Carolyn in the first of the single-seaters was as cool and composed as ever in the lubrication equipment Raceco. The father and son combination of Franz Czepek Sr. and Franz Czepek Jr. were also motoring along steadily in the V-Motors Raceco. Linton Draper and Alex Mack were also making up ground in the big Draper plant hire Chevy. Springboks RP Reinicker and Lucas Dreyer were among the pre-race favourites in the dealer Team Toyota Land Cruiser, along with teammates Kasi Kutsia and Richard Leek in the Toyota Hilux. Also going along steadily were Rustenburg crew Niels Eriksson and Johnny Walker in the Chenoweth Magnum, and Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the Land Rover. On the bike front, Yuri Human in the big Lesotho office equipment Kawasaki had the early pace to keep ahead of Alfie Cox on the 250 KTM. The weather was clouding over, but so far the rain had held off. Cox revels in the wet, but was holding on to Human and managing to keep the ever-spectacular Willie Ireland at bay. In the 200 class, it was Graham McLaughlin on the Lesotho office equipment Kawasaki and Richard Manning on the Winston Yamaha who were setting the early pace. McLaughlin and Manning were being chased by Alex Vowles on the Antalex Dairy Kawasaki. Behind Vowles, one of the pre-race favourites, Lesotho rider Patrick Andrews, had lost some early ground and was under pressure from Winston Yamaha rider Daryl Curtis. Ominous storm clouds were also starting to move in over the Pilanesberg Mountains. A little bit of off-road history was made at the Honeyloop Sun City 400, with quad races granted South African championship status for the first time. The quads are fast, spectacular and difficult to ride. Billy Coetzee on a Suzuki set the early pace, and first time out, the quad class drew an entry of 20 machines. And this augurs well for the future of this category of racing. As usual, there was plenty of activity in the pit area. The pit stops offer a little respite for wearied riders, drivers and navigators. Springbok, Bux Carolyn and Jeff Bell had lost valuable time in the dealer Team Toyota Hilux, and running repairs are often needed for both men and machinery. The rain was still holding off, but a tough route was starting to take its toll. Vickers van Deventer made a lengthy pit stop with Rob Walk unable to sustain his early charge. The Coetzee brothers, Theo and Eugene, were going along steadily in the Chev Bucky, but Harry Roscoe was having a tough time of it in the Protea Playing Cards Raceco. With Klaus Degener and Thilo van Westenhagen and other frontrunners dropping back through a variety of problems, the Chepek father and son combination found themselves in the lead in the V-Motors Raceco. The consistent Niels Eriksen and Johnny Walker had moved into second on the road in the Chenoweth Magnum, but it was not always plain sailing. The modern space frame off-road vehicle may be a high-tech piece of machinery, but the turning circle is not one of their strong points. Eriksen and Walker were delayed momentarily, but the Cassie Coetzee Richard Leek Toyota Hilux coped a little better with what was a tricky portion of road to negotiate. Coetzee and Leek both won Springbok colours for rallying and were well placed when the rain started to come down on sections of the course. It made for tough going, and there were often stark contrasts between dry and wet portions of the route. Richard Carolyn, affectionately known as Obut among the off-road fraternity, was soldiering steadily along in the lubrication equipment Raceco. Behind him, Klaus Degener and Thilo van Westenhagen were on another charge after losing time in the pits through brake problems. One of the quickest drivers around in off-road, Degener was out for the first time in the ex-Wilfried Westlau BP Raceco. When the rain finally arrived, it came down in buckets. Two huge cloudbursts turned the pits into a quagmire, and both the east and west loops of the course into nightmares for competitors. On the car front, the Chepeks were in a healthy lead, but all over the route, cars and buckies stranded in river crossings and dongas were starting to become a common sight. While some were going nowhere fast, a tired, wet but delighted Alfie Cox was already at the finish to win the motorcycle section for the third year in a row. Willie Ireland was second, 6 minutes behind Cox, with a great ride taking Alex Vowles into third place ahead of Patrick Andrews. While the bikes made light work of the conditions, it was a different story on the car front. Parts of the route, which earlier in the day had been easily negotiable, were suddenly raging torrents of water. Cars were dropping out left, right and centre, with the Chepeks firmly established in the lead with a cushion of nearly half an hour over Niels Eriksen and Johnny Walker. The intrepid Richard Carolyn was in third place. There were still a few hardy spectators out on the route as the rain continued to pour down. Cliff Barker and Mike Redden, with the Land Rover bearing the scars of a confrontation with the Draper Mack Chevy, were plugging along in fourth place. A thoroughly professional performance saw Franz Chepek Sr. and Franz Chepek Jr. first home, with half an hour to spare over second-place Niels Eriksen and Johnny Walker. Such were the conditions that only 4 cars made it to the finish, the lowest ever number of car finishes in any SA off-road event.
The last 2 laps we basically did all in one big river. The water was sometimes like 2 to 3 foot deep, driving in this water. The goggles open, I don't even see the eyes, took a hell of a hammering, a lot of concentration, but we got it together and we made it to the end, and it was very nice.
Winner Alfie Cox also took the 250 class, with Alex Vowles first in the 200 class. The 500 category and 6th overall went to Yuri Human.
Well, today I had a hell of a race with Yuri Human. He's on a 500 and the 250 just hasn't got the speed of that 500. So we've been racing for 3 of the 4 loops, and then the rain came down, and lucky on my side, I ride pretty well in the rain, and I managed to pull away from them quite a bit. And I'm very happy that first time out on the KTM that we've won.